Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about retirement travel in Europe. Everything has changed.
Everything has changed. There is a lot going on with Europe right now, and we're going to break that down for you. You've probably seen on the news recently, it came to a head kind of in Barcelona where they were kind of complaining about over-tourism and even giving tourists a really hard time, weren't they?
Yeah, it was, it could be a little bit scary if you're a tourist in a place and you've got, people hosing you down with water while you're trying to eat in a restaurant, or, you see them walking around town with signs, tourists go home, or just yelling at you, that kind of stuff. It's very uncomfortable, and you're not going to have a good time in a place, especially the way we travel, slow travel for long periods of time. It's hard to enjoy a place when you know you're not wanted there.
So in reaction to this, governments are taking some action, and basically they're making it so that Airbnbs cannot be listed in a lot of cities. You see this even in the US some. And really in Barcelona, they're going to outlaw Airbnbs. A lot of Europe is going to start to do the same. What's going to happen with this is it is going to drive the price of hotels up. Those prices are going to go up through the roof. And so there needs to be a new strategy, a new way of thinking about this for us as retirement travelers. And luckily there is a good strategy to combat this, and that is to book hotels with points. Because the points price for some chains don't fluctuate nearly as much as the cash prices do. And the points prices are not going to keep up with this as quickly as the cash rates do go up. Another point of this is that another kind of scam they're doing is that they're starting to make hotel prices non-refundable unless you book at a higher rate. So if it's $200 for the hotel room and that's a non-refundable rate, to get one that's refundable it might be $250. And this is just really a bad thing, and it's driving people away also. But if you book with points, it's always refundable. So our strategy is to accumulate as many points as possible, and then to buy as many points as possible, and then book with points.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing is, and we've talked about this many times in our other videos about, using points and hotel status and all that kind of stuff, is it's important to get those points and to be booking with points as opposed to the cash rate, because like you said, they're going to be charging you more if you want a refundable rate. And, there's a lot of cases where you want to book someplace and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do a week there, 10 days there, 2 weeks there, whatever. You can fluctuate with that. With the points, you don't have to worry about, I don't know what I want to do. Okay, well, just book it with your points, and if you want to change it, you can change it. Generally, the points are not going to change very much, if at all.
Let me give you an example here. This is going to be in Vienna at the Lindner Hotel, Vienna Belvedere. So I just looked for next year. Let's say you want to go to Vienna next spring, March 16th to the 23rd. The price for 1 week is $833 for 1 week, and that is a non-refundable rate. So if I book that, I can't change it. And as retirement travelers, we want to be very flexible because things change. We cancel stuff all the time. But they do have, this is a Hyatt brand hotel. You can book that also for 3,500 points per night. So a total of 24,500 points, or $833 non-refundable. Now you can buy Hyatt points when they're on sale for between 1.7 and 1.92 cents per point. We have links to where you can buy that in the description below. And if you were to buy those at the higher end at 1.92 cents, 24,500 points comes out to $470. So you're saving almost half the price by buying points, and you're getting a refundable rate versus the $833 non-refundable cash rate. And the same is true of IHG and of Hilton. You can buy points for all three of those. We have a link in the description to buy points for all three of those. We buy hotel points all the time. We almost try to never book with a cash rate. In fact, there's really not much reason unless you just completely run out of points and you can't get any more.
Exactly. There's a very few times where we book a cash rate only if we want like a very particular room and you can't book it with points or whatever. But for the most part, I would say 95% of the time probably we book with points because we want that flexibility of refundable, the points, and they automatically go right back into
Yep.
your account, and you can automatically turn around and use those on something else, which we have done tons and tons of times. Had we booked those with a cash rate, we would be out a lot of money, or we would have had to go to these places and not been able to change our plans. You want to have that flexibility.
You do, because if it's a year away and we're going to Europe, we'll just say, hey, let's reserve a couple hotels here and here. We'll get a couple in Barcelona. We'll get a couple in Rome. That's what we think we might want to do, but it's a year away. We may want to change that. We likely will want to change that. But if you wait, the prices could go way up. So we want to get something reserved and then be able to have that flexibility. Now, the question is, how do you get all these points? So there's two ways to get the points. You can buy them, like we said, links in the description, or you can get them through having a credit card. This is for the most part for Americans. Other countries do have some, but the ones we're going to mention are for Americans. The Chase Business Inc. is probably one of our favorites because they come with a huge welcome offer of 100,000 points, and those can transfer to Hyatt. So you're going to be able to get a lot of free nights. We also like to accrue points on the American Express Gold, and then the American Express Platinum is great for having status. And of course, cards we always talk about, the IHG and the World of Hyatt, are also great for getting points. So that's how we would do that. We have a link for all of those cards below. The next thing that's changing in Europe, though, is that visas are really being tightened. And you see this in Portugal with their golden visa, which has undergone a lot of changes.
Yeah, I think this is a challenging one for people, is kind of reworking things, because they were making plans on going someplace for a certain amount of time, and now with the changes in visas and amount of time you could stay, or changing how much you have to put into a country in order to acquire a certain visa, is also changing and going up. So also putting that out of reach of people too.
Yeah, and so we've noticed that rental prices in Portugal have been skyrocketing over the last year, just looking on Airbnb, due to in part to the influx of expats who have moved there. There are less places available for rent, and so that's why the governments are putting this in, is to kind of say, look, we don't want people buying these places anymore because the rents are going up, and it's true across the board. So when you search now versus a few years ago, it's practically doubled in price, and that's not good. And so it just has people looking in other directions, and it just makes it a little less good to go to Europe, because you're just not getting the deals that we used to get.
Exactly. That's one of the places we went to very often when we first started, because we could stay in so many countries in and around Europe, and now that's changing. So when visa situations change, that changes also the way that we move around the world.
Another change, and this one again is a negative change. Pretty much all of these are negative. Things are not, everything's changing in Europe. It's not for the positive. That's, as a traveler, as a tourist, it's not a good thing. But more countries have joined the Schengen region, which is a negative change for us as Americans, as Canadians. This is not a good thing for us, because basically we get 90 days of a visa during a 180-day period in any Schengen zone country. And the more countries that join that, the more that you have to stay out of those countries. So it used to be you could go to the Schengen zone for 90 days in a 180-day period, but you could then spend the next 90 days basically in Europe still, just in countries that weren't a part of the Schengen. But the more countries that join Schengen, the less options you have, and you're eventually going to have to just leave Europe altogether for 90 days, which makes it just hard to include that as a long-term travel destination. When we first started doing this, going to Europe, Romania was not a part of Schengen, Croatia was not a part of Schengen, so you could go spend 90 days in France and Spain and Italy and then go to Croatia and Romania and Ireland, and then just redo France, Spain, and Italy again because you were never really running out of time. Now, with Romania, Croatia, Bulgaria joining Schengen, you're really down to just Cyprus and Ireland that are not in Schengen. So unless you want to spend 3 months in Cyprus and Ireland, it's going to be tough to spend 6 months in Europe.
Yeah, you're gonna have to really get more off the beaten path in the European countries in order to stay there longer, because we know a lot of people who try to stay in and around Europe for a year or two, and it's becoming harder and harder. They're like, our go-to, non-Schengen places are now Schengen. So and I think that, maybe they saw that that was the case because so many people were going to Croatia to step out of Schengen, or were going to Romania to step out of Schengen. But I mean, we did that actually a few years ago, we did that ourselves to get out of Schengen in order to work our way back in after our 180 days was up. So, it can be really challenging. The more countries that are added in, the harder it is to build an itinerary to stay in and around Europe for a long time.
The next thing is this ETIAS system that is being implemented, and this is supposed to be coming online October 6th of 2024, unless it is pushed back again, which they've been changing the date pretty much at will, so you don't really know when it's going to start, but the idea is it's going to be an electronic system for tracking your Schengen usage, and you're going to have to pay a €7 fee. It's good for 3 years. And then they're going to be able to track you easier. Because we did notice when we were traveling in Europe, there really was no good way of tracking where we were. We would come to a country and show up to the airport and just walk through customs and there was nobody even working. And that would be a country where you had to stamp in or out of Schengen. And it's just, the system wasn't great. So from that standpoint, it's going to be easier for them to track you. You're going to have to pay some money to get this. And it's just going to be more paperwork. So it's not a visa. You don't get anything for it. So essentially, it's just a fee and more red tape that you have to do, which is not super positive for the traveler.
Yeah, and it just gets even more complicated because, you could be doing cruises, and is that going to be under that? And I think they're just still they keep pushing back the date on it because I think they're still trying to work through some of that for the counter, essentially, on your passport for when you're in Schengen. And I just think it's so complicated that I think they've been struggling with the structure of it because it is so complicated. I mean, most people have a really hard time kind of figuring it out too. You'll get there's a ton of apps where you could get a Schengen counter, countdown or whatever that does that. But again, so many people, and even like us, will do cruises in and around there that you're going to be in and out of Schengen zone, as you travel around on a cruise. Do those count? Do those not count? So that's the whole, it makes it all super complicated.
Yeah. The next thing that's changing is you do see the sentiment of locals starting to change with the tourists. And, you're going to be looked at as a tourist when you go there, even if you're going for a long time or trying to live or be a digital nomad. And it's not a great change of sentiment. So we have felt very welcomed in Europe. We love going to Europe, but you do see the tides starting to shift. And that's just something to be aware of. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go to Europe. None of these changes mean you shouldn't go to Europe. It just means that it is becoming harder and a little more inefficient to be in Europe. And so that's what has people like us and a lot of other people that we know saying, you know what, maybe instead of 6 months in Europe, we're going to do 2 months in Europe and put a little more time into Asia or Latin America or Africa or something like that, because it's just becoming a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think it's really a struggle, and it's really kind of sad to see how that's happened, kind of around Europe. You could see that building over the last few years, but they kind of hit ahead there with a lot of the things that we talked about already, with the Airbnb and all those types of things kind of piling up, and people just saying, we're kind of sick of people coming here and just, whatever the reason might be. It's hard, to kind of count that in now. Now, it's like I hate to go someplace where I don't feel completely wanted there. So that does make it really hard to make a decision and to work it into the plan, you know, for our travels throughout the year. It makes it really hard to say, oh yeah, for sure, let's go there and let's try to spend 6 months there. It's like, you know, it's harder now.
Yeah, so if you are doing some retirement travel, considering that, or wanting to do that in the next few years, we wanted to mention we do have a retirement travel jumpstart course, which will get you up to speed in no time. Tons of video lessons on anything you could imagine. And on top of that, if you have more questions, it does come with a community of people who are like us, already traveling. That's what you need. Somebody who can answer a question that you might have. Someone in the community has done what you are thinking of doing, and they can tell you that's a great idea or that is a terrible idea. And that is better to find out before you do said idea.
For sure. Guys, hopefully this was helpful to you. If you have questions, leave those for us down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like. And if you would like to subscribe, also join us by clicking that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys next time.